Marcus Reynolds sits silently in first class as flight attendant Stephanie Whitman sneers. That meal is reserved for our priority passengers, while serving identical steaks to white executives beside him. The tension crackles when Marcus calmly reveals, "I'm not just a passenger. I own Aerosphere Airlines as of 10 minutes ago." Her face drains of color as Marcus presses the intercom button. "All cabin crew to the galley immediately," echoes through the cabin as his phone displays. "Board emergency meeting concluded. Acquisition complete." Will justice be served at 30,000 feet? Or is this just the beginning of a war Marcus never anticipated? Before we dive into this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from, and if you believe in standing up against discrimination, hit that like and subscribe button to join our community fighting for justice. Marcus Reynolds wasn't born into wealth or privilege. At 43, the self-made billionaire had built TechVision Enterprises from his college dorm room into a global technology powerhouse that revolutionized cloud computing and artificial intelligence systems. His journey had been anything but easy. As a black man in the overwhelmingly white tech industry, he'd faced countless closed doors, skeptical investors, and dismissive executives who couldn't see past the color of his skin to recognize his brilliant mind. Today marked a significant milestone in his expanding business empire. After months of negotiations, TechVision had officially acquired the struggling Aerosphere Airlines, a once prestigious carrier that had fallen on hard times due to mismanagement and declining customer satisfaction. The acquisition wasn't just a business move, it was personal for Marcus. He'd experienced terrible service and subtle discrimination on Aerosphere flights despite his success and first-class tickets. Rather than simply complain, he decided to fix the problem by buying the entire airline. "Remember, sir, this is strictly an observational flight." Zara Chen, his razor-sharp executive assistant, had reminded him that morning as he prepared to board the transcontinental flight from New York to Los Angeles. The board doesn't want anyone knowing about the ownership change until the official announcement next week. Marcus had nodded, straightening his deliberately casual sweater and jeans. No designer labels, no expensive watch, nothing that screamed, "Billionaire CEO." "That's exactly why I need to fly incognito, Zara. I want to experience exactly what our customers experience, without any special treatment." What Zara didn't know was that Marcus had accelerated the timeline. After reviewing troubling internal reports about the airline's culture, he'd pushed the board to complete the acquisition immediately, giving him full authority starting today. The papers had been signed just minutes before his flight was scheduled to depart. Unknown to Marcus, Stephanie Whitman had been with Aerosphere for 15 years and prided herself on recognizing important passengers. The senior flight attendant maintained a carefully cultivated persona of warmth and hospitality, but beneath her perfect smile lurked deeply ingrained prejudices she kept hidden from most colleagues. She had built a reputation for giving special attention to passengers she deemed valuable, while providing merely adequate service to those she considered less important. Her immediate superior, flight manager Dylan Mercer, not only shared her biases but actively encouraged preferential treatment for certain passengers. His 20-year career had plateaued after being passed over for executive positions, breeding resentment that he channeled into maintaining his small domain of power with rigid hierarchy and favoritism. His connections to several airline board members had protected him from previous complaints. The luxury transcontinental flight from NYC to LA was Aerosphere's flagship service, featuring fully reclining seats, premium dining, and exclusive amenities for first-class passengers. It regularly carried celebrities, executives, and wealthy travelers who expected impeccable service. As Marcus settled into his first-class seat, he observed the subtle indicators of quality and attention to detail that once made Aerosphere an industry leader. The leather seats showed signs of careful maintenance despite their age, and the cabin's design, while not recently updated, still conveyed elegance. However, he also noticed the flight attendant's selective attentiveness, warmly greeting certain passengers while efficiently processing others. This assessment will determine exactly where we need to make changes, Marcus thought as he declined the pre-flight champagne offered to the white executive next to him, but not extended his way. He pulled out his tablet, adding notes to his observations document, completely unaware that this routine flight would soon become anything but ordinary. The discrimination began the moment Marcus stepped onto the aircraft. While the flight attendants warmly greeted the white passengers with smiles and, "Welcome aboard, sir," or, "We're delighted to have you flying with us today, ma'am," Marcus received only a curt nod and, "Seat 2C is to your right." Did the flight crew see him as just another passenger, or was something more sinister at play? As he placed his carry-on in the overhead compartment, Marcus noticed Stephanie Whitman, the lead flight attendant, approaching a white executive a few rows ahead. "Mr. Harrison, so wonderful to see you again. Will you be enjoying your usual scotch once we're airborne?" she asked with genuine warmth. The contrast between this interaction and his own reception was striking. When another attendant passed by checking boarding passes, she paused at Marcus's seat with a furrowed brow. "Sir, are you certain you're in the correct cabin?" she asked, despite his first-class ticket clearly visible in his hand. The passenger next to him, a middle-aged white man in a slightly rumpled suit, received no such question. Once the plane reached cruising altitude, the drink service began. Marcus observed as Stephanie and her team methodically worked through the first-class cabin, somehow consistently serving him last or skipping him entirely until he raised his hand. When he finally received his sparkling water, it came without the warm nuts or hot towel offered to others. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely as Stephanie passed by for the third time. "I believe the beverage service was missed for my seat." Her smile never reached her eyes as she replied, "We're quite busy today, sir. I'll get to you when I can." 45 minutes into the flight, the meal service began. The flight attendants rolled out elegant carts displaying several premium options, including a specially prepared Wagyu steak that the menu described as our signature first-class offering. When the cart reached Marcus's row, he requested the steak. Stephanie's expression hardened. "I'm sorry, sir, but that selection is reserved for our priority passengers. Perhaps you'd prefer the chicken or pasta option?" Marcus glanced to his right, where the white businessman was already cutting into the exact same steak. He kept his voice level despite his growing frustration. "I believe all first-class passengers have access to the same menu options. I'd like the steak, please." Stephanie's smile tightened. "As I explained, those meals are pre-allocated to our frequent flyers and loyalty members. I can offer you alternatives." Before Marcus could respond, Flight Manager Dylan Mercer appeared at his side, summoned by some silent signal from Stephanie. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his tone suggesting Marcus was creating a disturbance. "I simply requested the steak option that appears on the first-class menu," Marcus explained calmly. Dylan exchanged a look with Stephanie before turning back to Marcus. "Sir, certain premium selections are reserved for our Diamond Medallion members and passengers with long-standing relationships with Aerosphere. I'm sure you understand that we must prioritize our most valued customers." The coded language was unmistakable. Marcus had heard similar phrases throughout his career, whenever someone wanted to exclude him without explicitly mentioning race. As he prepared to respond, his phone vibrated with an incoming message. Glancing down, he saw a notification from his legal team. "Acquisition complete. All documents signed and filed. You now have full operational control of Aerosphere Airlines effective immediately." The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Marcus took a deep breath and looked up at Dylan and Stephanie, who were already turning away, considering the matter resolved. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice carrying just enough authority to freeze them in place. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. My name is Marcus Reynolds." Dylan's expression remained dismissive. "Sir, if you'd like to file a complaint, there are channels for that after we land." "That won't be necessary," Marcus replied, rising slightly from his seat. "As the new owner and CEO of Aerosphere Airlines as of approximately 10 minutes ago, I can address the issue immediately." The color drained from both their faces as the impact of his words registered. Several nearby passengers looked up from their meals, suddenly interested in the unfolding drama. Marcus pressed the call button. When another flight attendant approached, he asked, "Could you please use the intercom to request all cabin crew to the first-class galley for an immediate meeting? Thank you." Have you ever witnessed discrimination happen right before your eyes? Comment number 1 if you believe Marcus handled the situation with appropriate restraint, or number 2, if you think he should have been more forceful from the beginning. Don't forget to like this video if you're eager to see what happens when these discriminatory employees realize they've picked the wrong passenger to mistreat. Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss the next part of this incredible story. Will Marcus's revelation change how the crew treats him, or is this confrontation just the beginning of something much bigger and more dangerous than he could have anticipated? The first-class galley transformed into an impromptu boardroom as the confused cabin crew assembled. Shock registered on their faces as Marcus calmly explained that Tech Vision Enterprises had completed its acquisition of Aerosphere Airlines and that he was now effectively their boss. "But sir, we weren't informed of any ownership change," Dylan sputtered, his previously confident demeanor crumbling. "There must be some misunderstanding." Marcus held up his phone displaying official documentation. The board decided to accelerate the timeline. The announcement was scheduled for next week, but I now have full operational authority. His voice remained measured but firm. "What I witnessed today was unacceptable discrimination that violates not only company policy, but federal law." Stephanie attempted to interject. "Mr. Reynolds, there was no discrimination involved. We simply follow protocols for meal service based on loyalty status and—" "Please don't insult my intelligence," Marcus cut her off. "I observed every first-class passenger receiving the premium meal option except me, despite identical ticket status. This follows a pattern of differential treatment from the moment I boarded." Dylan's strategy shifted to damage control. "If there was any misunderstanding, we deeply apologize. Perhaps in the rush of service, mistakes were made, but I assure you there was no intent to." "Intent doesn't matter when the impact is discriminatory," Marcus stated. "As of this moment, both of you are relieved of your duties." The galley fell silent. The other flight attendants exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly processing the dramatic turn of events. "You can't just fire us at 30,000 feet, Dylan protested, though his voice lacked conviction. "Actually, I can. My legal team has confirmed that as CEO with cause involving discrimination, I have that authority." Marcus turned to a younger flight attendant who had been quietly observing. "Your name?" "Aisha Johnson, sir," she replied, maintaining her composure despite the tension. "Ms. Johnson, did you notice the service discrepancy I described?" She hesitated only briefly before answering honestly. "Yes, sir. I noticed but wasn't in a position to override my superiors." Marcus nodded. "Understandable. For the remainder of this flight, you'll serve as lead cabin attendant. Please ensure all passengers receive equal respectful service regardless of appearance or perceived status." Aisha straightened her posture. "Yes, sir. I can do that. The rest of you have a choice." Marcus addressed the remaining crew. "You can either provide exemplary, equitable service for the duration of this flight, after which we'll have a more comprehensive discussion about company values, or you can join Ms. Whitman and Mr. Mercer." No one chose the latter option. As Marcus returned to his seat, the passenger reactions were mixed. Some whispered behind raised hands, others stared openly with expressions ranging from amusement to disapproval. The white businessman who had received the steak without question shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact. Within minutes, Aisha appeared with the Wagyu steak dinner. "My apologies for the delay, Mr. Reynolds. Is there anything else I can provide to improve your flight experience?" "This is perfect, thank you," Marcus replied, believing he had resolved the situation decisively. What he didn't see was Dylan Mercer slipping into the rear galley, phone pressed to his ear as he spoke urgently in hushed tones. "Bradley, it's Dylan. We have a situation. The acquisition went through early, and Reynolds is on my flight." "Yes, that Reynolds. He just fired me and Stephanie on the spot for—" "No, he saw right through it. He's talking about discrimination lawsuits. You need to do something immediately before he starts digging into the operations. He'll find everything." On the other end of the line, Bradley Walsh, a founding board member of Aerosphere and significant shareholder even after the acquisition, felt a cold rage building. At 59, Bradley had carefully constructed a public image as a progressive, businessman, while privately maintaining networks that protected the status quo and his position of privilege. The accelerated acquisition had caught him off guard, leaving insufficient time to cover certain financial irregularities and hiring practices that would not withstand scrutiny. "Don't worry about your job," Bradley assured Dillon. "This is a temporary setback. Reynolds thinks he's won, but he has no idea what he's walked into. I'll activate our contingency plan. By the time that plane lands, he'll be facing bigger problems than airline meals." As Marcus finished his meal, feeling satisfied with how he'd handled the situation, he noticed his tablet exhibiting strange behavior. Apps closed unexpectedly, emails failed to send, and his secure company drive showed error messages when he attempted to access certain files. Attributing it to poor in-flight connectivity, he switched to his phone, only to find similar issues. The first digital tendrils of Bradley's counterattack had already begun to wrap around Marcus's technology, and by extension, his company and reputation. The discrimination incident that Marcus thought he had resolved was merely the first skirmish in what would become a much larger, more dangerous battle. The moment Marcus's flight touched down at LAX, his world began unraveling with alarming speed. As passengers around him turned on their phones and gasped at incoming notifications, Marcus's own device exploded with alerts. TechVision stock had plummeted 17% in the final hours of trading, an unprecedented drop for the stable tech giant. "What the hell?" he muttered, scrolling through frantic messages from his executive team. Breaking news alerts dominated his screen. TechVision CEO shows erratic behavior on commercial flight. Reynolds has public meltdown after airline acquisition. Sources question mental stability of tech billionaire. How had this happened so quickly? The incident had occurred less than 4 hours ago, at 30,000 feet. As Marcus disembarked, he noticed passengers pointing phones in his direction, some speaking in hushed tones. Many held back to avoid walking near him, as if his alleged instability might be contagious. Finding a quiet corner in the terminal, Marcus attempted to log into TechVision's executive systems to issue a statement. His credentials were rejected. He tried again with the same result. A third attempt triggered a security alert. Multiple failed login attempts, account temporarily suspended. "This isn't right," Marcus said to himself, switching to his emergency backup authentication method. That too had been disabled. Someone had systematically locked him out of his own company's systems. His phone rang. It was Zara, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Marcus, where are you? The board has called an emergency meeting. They're saying you had some kind of breakdown on the flight." "Breakdown? I fired 2 employees for clear discriminatory practices. It was completely justified and documented." "That's not the story that's circulating," Zara replied. "There are reports from anonymous passengers claiming you became irrationally angry over a meal preference and began threatening Steph. It's all over social media, and Bradley Walsh is leading the charge in the boardroom." The name triggered immediate recognition. Bradley Walsh had opposed the airline acquisition from the beginning, arguing that it would distract from TechVision's core business. As one of the few board members who had retained significant shares in Aerosphere after the sale, his motivation seemed suspect to Marcus even then. "I'm heading to headquarters now," Marcus told Zara. "Delay the meeting if you can. I need to address this in person." The ride from LAX to TechVision's downtown LA headquarters took 40 excruciating minutes. Every news radio station seemed to be discussing his alleged meltdown, with commentators speculating about the pressure of running a major corporation and the dangers of expanding too quickly into unfamiliar industries. When the car finally pulled up to the gleaming glass tower of TechVision's headquarters, Marcus sprinted toward the entrance, only to be stopped by 2 security guards he didn't recognize. "I'm sorry, sir. We have orders not to allow you access to the building at this time," the larger of the 2 stated impassively. Marcus stared in disbelief. "I'm Marcus Reynolds. I'm the CEO of this company. This is my building." "We understand who you are, Mr. Reynolds. We have direct orders from the board chairperson. No exceptions." Pedestrians began to notice the confrontation, some recording with their phones. Marcus realized this was exactly what Bradley wanted: more public evidence of supposedly erratic behavior. He forced himself to remain calm. Please contact Zara Chen, my executive assistant. She'll confirm my access rights. While one guard made the call, a news van pulled up across the street, camera operator already filming the scene. This wasn't random. Someone had tipped them off. The guard returned. I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds. Ms. Chen's authority has been temporarily suspended as well. You'll need to take this up with the board directly. Marcus was weighing his limited options when his phone buzzed with a text from Zara. Service entrance on Figueroa, security code 3294, hurry. Nodding to the guards as if accepting defeat, Marcus walked around the corner and down the block before doubling back to the service entrance. The code worked, and he slipped into the building unnoticed through the loading area. Zara was waiting in the service elevator, her usually immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. They've locked down the executive floor and called every board member for an emergency vote. Bradley's orchestrated this whole thing. He's presenting evidence that you're mentally unfit to continue as CEO. Evidence? What evidence could they possibly have? The elevator doors opened to the muffled sounds of heated discussion from the main boardroom. Through the small window in the door, Marcus could see Bradley Walsh standing at the head of the table, gesturing emphatically to a presentation on the large screen. Clearly demonstrates unstable behavior escalating over recent months, Bradley was saying. Today's airline incident is unfortunately just the latest example. For the good of the company, we need to act decisively. On the screen played a heavily edited video from the flight, showing Marcus speaking firmly to the flight crew, but with his reasonable explanations cut out, making his actions appear unprovoked and excessive. Where had this footage come from? Who had recorded and edited it so quickly? Marcus pushed open the door, causing all heads to turn in stunned silence. I believe you're discussing me, he said quietly. Perhaps I should be part of this conversation. Bradley recovered quickly. Marcus, we're concerned about you. This isn't personal. We're acting in the best interest of TechVision and its shareholders. By spreading lies and manipulating evidence, Marcus countered, stepping further into the room. By locking me out of my own company based on a fabricated incident? The footage speaks for itself, Bradley replied smoothly, gesturing to the screen where the edited video looped. Multiple witnesses have come forward. That footage has been selectively edited, Marcus stated. I was responding to clear discriminatory treatment by airline staff who have a documented history of such behavior. Behavior that you, Bradley, as a board member of Aerosphere, should have addressed long ago. A flicker of uncertainty passed across Bradley's face, quickly masked. This isn't about the airline. This is about a pattern of concerning behavior and rash decision-making that puts our company at risk. Marcus scanned the faces around the table. Some wouldn't meet his eyes, while others showed genuine confusion, clearly caught between conflicting narratives. What's really going on here, Bradley? Marcus asked, stepping closer. Is it that I acquired Aerosphere before you could clean up certain irregularities? Because my team has already flagged unusual financial patterns that seem to implicate board members skimming from maintenance budgets. Would that have anything to do with your sudden concern for my mental health? The room fell completely silent. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Bradley's expression hardened. These are serious and unfounded accusations. Marcus, you're only proving my point about your stability. Then let's investigate properly, Marcus countered. I have my own unedited recording of today's incident, complete with timestamps and witness statements from other passengers and crew. I propose a 48-hour period for an independent review of all evidence before any vote takes place. The board chairwoman, Dr. Helena Foster, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. That seems reasonable. The bylaws require due diligence before any action regarding leadership changes. I move to postpone the vote pending a full investigation. Despite Bradley's objections, the motion passed. As the meeting adjourned, Marcus felt a momentary sense of relief. He had gained valuable time to counter this attack and expose Bradley's schemes. That relief vanished minutes later as he exited the building. A swarm of reporters surrounded him, shoving microphones in his face, while shouting questions. Mr. Reynolds, can you comment on the sealed court documents from 2018? Is it true you've been concealing a history of volatile behavior? Multiple sources claim you've been self-medicating with unprescribed substances. Any response? Marcus pushed through the crowd, saying nothing as his driver rushed to open the car door. As it closed, muffling the shouted questions, he turned to Zara with a look of bewilderment. What court documents? What are they talking about? Zara's expression confirmed his worst fears. It's not true, but they're creating a past that never existed. While you were in the air, someone has been very busy constructing an alternate reality with your name on it. The corporate sabotage had moved beyond the boardroom into the realm of character assassination, and Marcus realized he was fighting an enemy far more prepared and ruthless than he had initially understood. The 48 hours Marcus had secured proved woefully inadequate against the onslaught Bradley had orchestrated. By the time the rescheduled board meeting convened, the situation had deteriorated dramatically. Marcus strode into the boardroom with determination, though exhaustion shadowed his eyes after 2 sleepless nights trying to regain control of his company's narrative. The atmosphere in the room was noticeably colder than before. Several board members who had seemed neutral now avoided his gaze entirely. Bradley sat at the far end, looking uncharacteristically confident for someone whose corrupt practices were about to be exposed. "Thank you all for convening again," Marcus began. "I prepared evidence that clearly refutes the allegations against me and raises serious questions about the motivations behind this attempted coup." Bradley smiled thinly. "Before you continue, Marcus, we've received some additional information that the board should review." He nodded to his assistant, who distributed tablets to everyone present. These documents outline a pattern of concerning behavior dating back several years, including sealed testimony from former colleagues and employees. Marcus accepted the tablet with growing dread. The documents appeared authentic at first glance, complete with official letterheads and signatures. They described incidents of explosive anger, irrational decision-making, and vindictive actions against those who disagreed with him. None of it was true, yet it was presented with enough context and detail to seem plausible. "This is completely fabricated," Marcus stated, looking around the table. "I've never had these issues. You can verify with any of my long-term employees." "We did," Bradley countered smoothly. "Several corroborated these accounts when approached confidentially. They expressed fear of retaliation if they spoke openly." The board chairwoman, Helena Foster, frowned. "These are serious allegations, Marcus, combined with what we witnessed on the flight recording." "That recording was selectively edited," Marcus interrupted. "I have the complete version here, which shows clear discriminatory treatment that precipitated my response." He pulled out his phone to access the video, only to find the file corrupted. This isn't right. The file was perfect yesterday." Bradley shook his head with manufactured sympathy. "More concerning behavior. Marcus, no one is questioning your past accomplishments, but the pressure of maintaining TechVision's growth while expanding into new industries appears to have taken a toll." Marcus felt the room slipping away from him. He needed to change tactics immediately. "Let's set aside my alleged behavior for a moment. I've uncovered evidence of significant financial irregularities at Aerosphere Airlines directly linked to board members, including Bradley Walsh." He pulled up financial records on his tablet, showing a complex web of maintenance budget allocations that disappeared into shell companies. These companies all trace back to offshore accounts with beneficial ownership structures that ultimately connect to Bradley and 2 other former Aerosphere board members. For the first time, Bradley looked genuinely concerned. Several board members leaned forward, examining the financial diagrams with renewed interest. "These are serious accusations," Helena noted. "They're desperate deflections," Bradley countered, regaining his composure. "Marcus is attempting to create a smokescreen to avoid scrutiny of his own actions. These financial structures are complex but entirely legitimate and were disclosed during the acquisition process." "That's not true," Marcus argued. "They were deliberately obscured through multiple layers of shell companies. My team only discovered them because we were specifically looking for discrepancies after witnessing the cultural problems within the airline." The boardroom divided into quiet whispers. Marcus sensed he was regaining some ground but needed irrefutable evidence to fully expose Bradley's corruption. "I propose a simple solution," Marcus said. an independent forensic accounting team to examine these financial records, alongside a review of my own conduct. Complete transparency on both sides. Bradley's expression hardened. We don't have time for extended investigations. The market is responding to the uncertainty. TechVision stock dropped another 5% this morning. We need decisive action now. Yes, after your coordinated media campaign created that uncertainty, Marcus pointed out. You've been planning this since the acquisition was announced. Helena raised her hand for silence. This has become more complicated than initially presented. I believe Marcus's suggestion for independent review has merit. Bradley leaned forward. The bylaws are clear. If the CEO's conduct presents immediate risk to the company, the board can vote for temporary suspension during any investigation. I move that we invoke that provision now. The vote was painfully close. 7 to suspend, 5 against with 2 abstentions. Not enough to remove Marcus permanently, but sufficient to temporarily strip him of operational authority pending investigation. I'm sorry, Marcus, Helena said genuinely. This is temporary while we sort through these competing claims. 48 hours for the independent review. As the meeting concluded, Marcus approached Bradley. You won't get away with this. The investigation will clear me and expose your embezzlement. Bradley smiled. Bold words from someone who just lost control of his company. You have no idea what's coming next, Marcus. By this time tomorrow, no one will believe anything you say, and that little financial trail you found, it will lead nowhere. Marcus watched Bradley leave, typing something on his phone with a satisfied smirk. Seconds later, Marcus's own phone buzzed with a security alert. Unauthorized access attempts on his personal accounts were multiplying exponentially. As he left the building, a wave of dizziness hit him. The events were moving too quickly, the attacks coming from too many directions. He steadied himself against the wall, drawing a concerned look from his driver. Are you all right, sir? I will be, Marcus replied, though uncertainty crept into his voice. Take me home. I need to prepare for what's coming. What he couldn't prepare for was the call Bradley made the moment he reached his car. Proceed with Operation Blackout. Release everything. Have you ever had someone try to discredit you when you were telling the truth? Comment number 1 if you believe Marcus should focus on clearing his name first, or number 2 if you think exposing Bradley's corruption is more urgent. Don't forget to hit that like button if you're shocked by how quickly things spiraled out of control, and subscribe to see how Marcus fights back against this corporate conspiracy. Will the independent investigation reveal the truth in time? Or has Bradley already planted too much false evidence for Marcus to overcome? The next morning arrived with a nightmare Marcus couldn't wake from. His phone jolted him awake at 5:14 a.m. with non-stop notifications. Bleary-eyed, he scrolled through an avalanche of breaking news alerts. Exclusive. Tech CEO Marcus Reynolds faced previous misconduct allegations. Court documents reveal Reynolds' history of instability. Former girlfriend speaks out, I feared for my safety. TechVision board considering permanent removal amid new revelations. Marcus sat up, fully alert now. The fabricated court documents Bradley had presented to the board had somehow leaked to the press, along with additional evidence that hadn't even existed yesterday. How was this happening so quickly? He switched on the television to find his face plastered across morning news programs. A woman he barely recognized from a brief relationship in college was being interviewed, her face partially obscured as she described behaviors Marcus had never exhibited. He would become a completely different person when things didn't go his way, she claimed. I never filed charges because I was afraid of what he might do. But seeing the news about his behavior on that flight brought everything back. The interview was interspersed with carefully selected photos showing Marcus looking stern or intense at various business events, completely stripped of their benign contexts. His phone rang with Zara's number. Marcus, don't go outside. There are protesters at your gate. He walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Sure enough, at least 20 people stood outside his home holding signs with slogans like, TechVision deserves better, and No to Toxic Leadership. News vans lined the street, cameras trained on his house. How did they get my address? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. It was leaked online last night along with your private email and phone number, Zara confirmed. You've received hundreds of threatening messages. I've forwarded the worst ones to security. Marcus checked his personal email to find it flooded, with vitriol from strangers convinced he was a monster based on the overnight revelations. Even more disturbing were the messages from longtime professional contacts distancing themselves from him. The Reynolds Foundation regrets to inform you that your scheduled appearance at next month's charity gala has been canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. In light of recent allegations, we believe it best to postpone our partnership discussions indefinitely. Please remove my name from any association with your projects going forward. The personal attacks quickly expanded beyond him. His parents called, shaken after receiving harassing phone calls throughout the night. His younger sister reported that her children were being bullied at school because of their relationship to him. Social media exploded with the hashtag Boycott TechVision, calling for customers to abandon the company's products and services until Marcus was permanently removed. The stock price, already wounded from previous days, plummeted another 12% at market open. Major clients began issuing statements distancing themselves from TechVision. The largest, a government defense contractor, announced they were reviewing all contracts in light of leadership concerns. They're trying to destroy everything I've built, Marcus told Zara when she arrived at his home through the back entrance, avoiding the growing crowd of protesters and reporters. This isn't just about removing me as CEO anymore. This is about making sure I can never recover. Bradley's playing to win, Zara agreed grimly. He knows if you survive this and regain control, his corruption will be exposed. He's making sure that doesn't happen. Have you been able to reach our security team? We need protection for my family at least. Zara's expression darkened further. That's another problem. Our head of security resigned this morning along with his entire team. They cited ethical concerns about continuing to work for you. They were compromised, Marcus realized. Bradley got to them. As they spoke, Marcus's home security system suddenly deactivated. All cameras went dark, all electronic locks disengaged with warning beeps. We're not safe here, he said, quickly gathering essential documents and devices. We need to go somewhere Bradley wouldn't expect. They slipped out through the garden as the protesters at the front gate grew louder. Marcus's autonomous vehicle wouldn't respond to his commands. Another system was compromised, so they took Zara's less sophisticated car instead. Where to? She asked as they pulled away unnoticed. Somewhere without cameras or electronic access, Marcus replied. Somewhere cash only. They found an aging motel on the outskirts of the city that still accepted cash without ID, a rarity. In 2025, the room was basic but clean, with spotty Wi-Fi that made it difficult to track their digital footprint. Marcus attempted to access his bank accounts to withdraw emergency funds, only to find all accounts frozen pending investigation into potential fraud. His credit cards were similarly locked. Bradley had effectively cut off his financial resources. He's thought of everything, Marcus said, the weight of the situation fully sinking in. In 24 hours, he's destroyed my reputation, isolated me from allies, endangered my family, compromised my security, and cut off my finances. How do you fight back against something like this? Zara, ever practical, was already working on her secure tablet. We still have resources he doesn't know about, people who might help us if we can reach them safely. But Marcus barely heard her. For the first time in his remarkably successful life, he faced an opponent who seemed to have outmaneuvered him at every turn. The evidence against Bradley felt meaningless, now buried beneath an avalanche of fabricated scandals that dominated every news cycle. He sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Maybe I should just walk away, resign permanently, leave the country, start over somewhere else. Zara stopped typing and looked at him with shock. That's exactly what he wants, for you to give up. What's the alternative? Watch everything and everyone I care about be destroyed while fighting a battle that's already lost? Before Zara could respond, her secure tablet pinged with an encrypted message. She read it quickly, her expression changing from despair to cautious hope. Marcus, someone just reached out through a channel Bradley doesn't know exists. She turned the screen toward him, showing a message from an unexpected source. "This is Aisha Johnson, the flight attendant you promoted during the incident. I know what's happening to you isn't right. I have evidence about Bradley Walsh's systematic discrimination policies at Aerosphere. I'm not the only one. There's a network of us who've documented everything for years, but had nowhere safe to report it. Now we do. If you're willing to fight back, we want to help." For the first time in days, a flicker of hope returned to Marcus's eyes. "They thought they could break me," he said quietly. "They just made me dangerous." The motel room became Marcus's command center over the next 24 hours, though command felt like an overstatement for a man who had lost control of virtually every aspect of his life. His world had contracted to this 12 by 15 foot space with its sagging mattress and flickering fluorescent lights, a far cry from the penthouse office where he once directed a global technology empire. Marcus sat cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by printouts of news articles and social media posts Zara had collected from various untraceable devices. The narrative Bradley had constructed was comprehensive. Marcus was portrayed as a brilliant but unstable leader, whose facade of control had finally cracked under pressure, revealing the volatile personality he'd supposedly hidden for years. "It's almost admirable how thoroughly they've rewritten my history," Marcus observed bitterly. "Former employees I've never met giving detailed accounts of tantrums I never threw. College classmates describing warning signs that never existed." Zara returned from her fourth coffee run of the day, having used yet another circuitous route to avoid potential surveillance. "Your college roommate just gave an interview defending you, but it's being buried beneath all the negative coverage. 3 more executives resigned this morning, citing the toxic culture you supposedly created." Marcus rubbed his temples, fighting a persistent headache born of stress and sleep deprivation. "Any word from my parents?" "They're safe. My contact got them to the lake house. No electronic footprint, cash only, just like you instructed." A notification on one of their burner phones interrupted the conversation. The secure messaging app they'd established with Aisha showed activity. "I've made contact with more allies," Aisha had written. "Meeting location secured, coordinates, and time to follow." Marcus looked at Zara questioningly. "Do we trust her?" "What choice do we have? Bradley's people control every official channel now." 4 hours later, they pulled into an abandoned TechVision warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The facility had been decommissioned during a consolidation project the previous year, making it unlikely to appear on Bradley's radar. Inside, instead of the empty space Marcus expected, they found a makeshift operations room. Folding tables held laptops and document boxes. A digital projector displayed a complex web of connections on the far wall. Most surprisingly, the space contained not just Aisha, but a dozen other people who turned to watch as Marcus entered. "Mr. Reynolds," Aisha stepped forward. "Thank you for coming. These are people who've experienced or witnessed Bradley Walsh's corruption firsthand." One by one, they introduced themselves. 5 current Aerosphere employees who had documented discriminatory practices. 3 former TechVision employees who'd been pressured to leave after raising ethical concerns about certain board members. And most unexpectedly, a silver-haired man in his 60s who stepped forward last. "Thomas Harrington," he said, extending his hand. "Former COO of Aerosphere until Bradley engineered my removal 8 years ago when I began investigating financial irregularities in the maintenance budget." Recognition dawned on Marcus's face. "I remember reading about your departure. The official story was early retirement due to health concerns," Thomas finished with a sardonic smile. "The health concerns magically appeared after I accessed certain financial records. Sound familiar?" For the next few hours, Marcus listened as each person shared their experiences. A pattern emerged of Bradley's methods: isolating targets, fabricating evidence, coordinating media attacks, and ensuring that anyone who challenged him faced personal and professional destruction. "The difference is that none of us had your resources or visibility," Thomas explained. Bradley counted on that. He's never faced an opponent who could potentially withstand his initial attack and fight back. "I'm not sure I am withstanding it," Marcus admitted. "My company access is revoked, my accounts are frozen, and my reputation is in tatters." He's been 3 steps ahead at every turn. "But you're still standing," Aisha pointed out. And now you're not alone. Thomas directed, their attention to the projected display. We've been mapping Bradley's network for years. He has connections throughout the industry, media contacts who publish his narratives without question, judges who seal or unseal records at his request, and even sources within law enforcement. How does one person wield that much influence? Marcus asked. It's not just him, Thomas explained. Bradley is part of an old guard network that protects its own. They've been operating this way for decades, maintaining power by crushing anyone who threatens their control or exposes their methods. Marcus studied the complex web of connections. So how do we fight something this entrenched? With evidence they can't bury, said a young man who had introduced himself as Elijah Washington. I was a cybersecurity specialist at Tech Vision before being forced out last year. I've been tracking Bradley's digital footprint since then. Elijah brought up several windows on his laptop. Bradley's careful, but not perfect. His offshore accounts leave traces. The shell companies have documentation trails. Most importantly, he gets sloppy with communication when he thinks he's winning. Can you access the unedited security footage from the flight? Marcus asked. Already working on it, Elijah replied. Aerosphere's systems have vulnerabilities they never addressed. Despite my recommendations, I can get back into their archive without leaving traces. As they developed their strategy, Aisha coordinated with her network of flight attendants who had faced harassment or witnessed discrimination. We have people documenting similar incidents on at least 17 other flights where Bradley's cronies were in charge of cabin crew. It's systematic. Thomas had been working through financial records. The maintenance budget skimming goes deeper than you initially found. Bradley and 2 other board members have been siphoning funds for at least a decade. We're talking tens of millions potentially diverted from critical safety systems. We need a trusted media contact, Zara noted. Someone who won't immediately alert Bradley's network. I might have someone, Marcus said. Dana Rivera. She's an investigative journalist who exposed corruption in the tech industry before. She refused Bradley's attempts to bring her into his sphere of influence last year. As Marcus placed the secure call to Dana explaining their situation and the evidence they were gathering, Thomas suddenly stiffened, listening intently. Everyone quiet, he commanded, moving to the window. Security vehicles approaching. Multiple SUVs, no markings. Elijah quickly began disconnecting systems. They've found us. Everyone grab what you can and head for the emergency exit. How did they track us? Marcus asked, as they hurriedly gathered essential documents and drives. We might have a mole, Zara suggested. Someone feeding information back to Bradley. They barely made it out through the loading dock as the vehicles surrounded the main entrance. From their hidden vantage point behind adjacent buildings, they watched as armed security personnel entered the warehouse they'd vacated minutes earlier. That was too close, Aisha whispered, as they dispersed to predetermined fallback locations. Later that night, regrouped at a secondary safe house, Marcus addressed the unsettling truth. Someone here is reporting to Bradley. We need to identify the leak before we can move forward. I have an idea, Elijah said quietly. Let's feed different information to different people. See which details make it back to Bradley. Marcus nodded grimly. Set the trap. It's time we started playing offense instead of defense. The abandoned textile factory 20 miles outside the city provided better cover than their previous location. With its defunct machinery still in place, the cavernous space offered multiple sections that could be repurposed for their growing operation. More importantly, its remote location and lack of digital infrastructure made it nearly impossible to track through conventional means. Marcus paced the concrete floor, reviewing their progress board where red string connected photos, documents, and timelines in an expanding web of evidence. 2 weeks had passed since his world imploded, though it felt like years. His beard had grown in patchy and unkempt, a physical manifestation of his altered circumstances. Elijah, what's the status on the flight footage? He called across the makeshift command center. The cybersecurity expert looked up from his workstation, where multiple monitors displayed code and security interfaces. I've bypassed their secondary firewalls. The archive should be accessible within the hour. They've implemented some interesting countermeasures since our last attempt. Their previous efforts to retrieve the unedited security footage had triggered alerts in Aerosphere's system, forcing them to retreat and recalibrate their approach. Bradley's team had clearly realized the importance of controlling that particular evidence. Aisha entered from the side room that served as their communications hub. In the days since their first meeting, she had transformed from a hesitant whistleblower into a confident coordinator, managing a growing network of current and former airline employees willing to document Bradley's abuses. "We've got confirmations from 23 more flight attendants," she announced. "They've provided written statements about discriminatory practices they were instructed to implement. 8 have specific instances involving Bradley personally." Giving those instructions, Marcus nodded approvingly. "That helps establish pattern and intent. What about the maintenance records Thomas was tracking?" "That's where we've hit gold," Zara interjected, gesturing for Marcus to join her at another workstation. "Thomas and I have traced the diverted maintenance funds through 5 shell companies to offshore accounts in the Caymans, Singapore, and Malta. The beneficial ownership documentation was cleverly obscured, but we've confirmed Bradley's signature on the original authorization forms." She brought up a series of financial transfers on her screen. "Conservative estimate puts the total at $47 million diverted over 8 years, funds that should have gone to critical safety systems and training programs." "That's not just corruption," Marcus observed. "That's potentially criminal negligence." "Exactly. Thomas is working with a contact at the FAA to determine what regulations were compromised. This goes beyond corporate malfeasance into potential federal violations." The progress was encouraging, but Marcus remained troubled by their security vulnerability. Following Elijah's suggestion, they had fed different pieces of misinformation to various team members, creating a tracing system to identify the leak in their ranks. "Any word from our canary traps?" he asked quietly when he and Zara were alone. She nodded grimly. "The false information about our meeting with SEC whistleblower protection officers made it back to Bradley within 4 hours. Only James Peterson had access to that particular detail." James Peterson, a corporate lawyer who had approached them claiming to have been wrongfully terminated from TechVision, had seemed genuinely eager to help their cause. His legal expertise had initially appeared invaluable. "Keep him compartmentalized," Marcus instructed. "Feed him only what we want Bradley to know. We can use this to our advantage." As the team worked to assemble their case, Marcus established contact with Donna Rivera, the investigative journalist known for her uncompromising exposure of corporate corruption. Her initial skepticism had turned to cautious interest as they provided the first pieces of verified evidence. "Bradley's network is scrambling," Dana reported in their latest secure call. "My sources say he's called in favors from every media contact he has to maintain the narrative against you. But there are cracks forming. Your college roommate's defense of you is gaining traction, and 3 of your supposedly aggrieved former employees have recanted their statements, claiming they were pressured to make false accusations." This was the first positive news on the public perception front, though Marcus knew the damage to his reputation remained severe. TechVision stock had stabilized somewhat after the initial freefall, but the company remained in crisis mode with an interim CEO appointed by the compromised board. As evening approached, Elijah's persistence finally paid off. "I'm in," he announced triumphantly. "Full access to the flight security archive, downloading all footage now." The team gathered around his station as the unedited video revealed exactly what Marcus had described: clear discriminatory treatment, selective service, and the coded language used by the flight crew to justify their behavior. Most damning was a brief segment capturing Dylan Mercer instructing Stephanie before the flight. "Walsh's protocol applies to 2C, standard differentiated service. That directly ties Bradley to the discrimination policy," Aisha noted. "Combined with our other testimonies, it establishes an explicit pattern directed from the top." Their momentum was building, but so was the pressure. Later that night, Thomas rushed in with alarming news. "My contact at Bradley's security firm says they're narrowing down our possible locations. They've identified the general area and are planning a systematic search beginning tomorrow." Marcus made a quick decision. "We need to accelerate our timeline. Dana needs the complete package immediately, not next week. Elijah, how quickly can we compile everything into a secure, verifiable format? Give me 6 hours, the cybersecurity expert replied. I'll create a blockchain-validated document package that can't be altered or denied once it's released. The team worked through the night, organizing, verifying, and preparing their evidence for public revelation. As dawn approached, Marcus took a moment alone to review the comprehensive case they had built. The flight footage provided irrefutable evidence of the discrimination that had triggered this entire chain of events. Financial records documented years of embezzlement from safety-critical systems. Testimony from dozens of employees established a pattern of discriminatory practices implemented on Bradley's direct orders. Electronic communications revealed the coordinated character assassination campaign against Marcus. Most recently, they had uncovered evidence that Bradley had personally directed security personnel to use any means necessary to silence Marcus and his supporters, a thinly veiled authorization for violence if needed. As Marcus contemplated their next move, a distant sound caught his attention. The faint but distinctive whir of drone rotors approached from the east. "Elijah," he called urgently, "are we broadcasting any signals?" The cybersecurity expert checked his equipment. Nothing active, but... His face fell as he realized the implication. James. He must have placed a physical tracker somewhere. Within minutes, the team's perimeter sensors detected vehicles approaching from multiple directions. Their location had been compromised. "Everyone, evacuation protocol Alpha," Marcus ordered calmly. "Take only essential evidence. We meet at fallback point 3 in 2 hours." As they rapidly packed critical materials, Marcus pulled Zara aside. "The original evidence package to Dana goes out now, ready or not. Then implement our contingency plan for James." She nodded, understanding immediately. "Feeding false information about our next location?" "Exactly. Let's give Bradley's team something to chase while we make our real move." The team scattered through predetermined escape routes just as the first security vehicles appeared on the horizon. Marcus, taking one final look at the command center they were abandoning, felt a strange sense of clarity amidst the chaos. The time for defense had ended. With their evidence secure and the mole identified, they could finally take the fight directly to Bradley Walsh. Have you ever been in a situation where someone was leaking information behind your back? Comment number 1. If you've experienced betrayal from someone you trusted, or number 2 if you would have handled the mole differently than Marcus did. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're on the edge of your seat waiting to see how Marcus uses this double agent to his advantage. Will Bradley fall into the trap they're setting, or does he still have cards left to play that could destroy everything they've worked for? The secluded mountain cabin that served as fallback point 3 had belonged to Marcus's grandfather, a detail he'd kept off all digital records. With no internet connection and minimal electricity from a small generator, it offered the perfect digital dark zone for their most sensitive operations. As team members arrived in staggered intervals over the next several hours, Marcus confirmed everyone had escaped the factory raid undetected. Everyone except James Peterson. Did he take the bait? Marcus asked Zara when she arrived last, having stayed behind to monitor communications channels. Completely, she confirmed with grim satisfaction. He escaped with the flash drive containing our supposed meeting plans with federal prosecutors. Bradley's team is currently setting up surveillance at an empty warehouse in San Bernardino. Marcus allowed himself a small smile, the first in weeks. Time to flip the script. From now on, James only gets the information we want Bradley to have. Their first piece of strategic misinformation was confirmation of a meeting with Dana Rivera at a downtown hotel the following evening. In reality, Dana had already received their evidence package and was working with her editors on verification protocols before publishing. Bradley will pull out all stops to intercept that meeting, Elijah predicted. He'll divert resources from other surveillance operations, thinking he's preventing the evidence from reaching the press. Meanwhile, we'll be executing our real plan, Marcus confirmed. Thomas, what's our status with the financial regulators? The former airline executive checked his secure phone. My contact at the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network has received our documentation. They're preparing warrants for the offshore accounts pending final verification. With Bradley's attention misdirected, Marcus implemented the next phase of their counteroffensive. Elijah had discovered that Bradley used a private security team, led by former military contractors for his most sensitive operations, including the intimidation of potential whistleblowers. These weren't just corporate security guards, but trained operatives working outside official channels. "We need to document their activities conclusively," Marcus told the team. "Not just for our case, but for our own protection." Their opportunity came sooner than expected. Acting on the false information from James, Bradley deployed his security team to intercept the non-existent meeting with Dana. Instead, they found themselves being photographed and recorded by plainclothes. Police officers Marcus had convinced to monitor the location, thanks to evidence of the team's previous illegal activities. The trap had been set perfectly, but Bradley's desperation proved more dangerous than they anticipated. That night, as Marcus returned from a secure call with Dana, a black SUV swerved toward him on the isolated mountain road. Only his quick reflexes saved him as he drove his vehicle into a shallow ditch, avoiding a direct collision. The SUV stopped and two armed men emerged, approaching his car with weapons drawn. Before they reached him, however, police cruisers appeared from hidden positions along the road the backup Marcus had arranged after receiving threats against his life. The would-be assailants were arrested, and their connections to Bradley's private security firm were quickly established. This apparent assassination attempt, coming after weeks of character assassination, transformed Marcus from alleged villain to potential victim in the public narrative. Dana's first article broke the next morning. Tech CEO targeted by corrupt airline executive. Evidence reveals systematic discrimination and financial crimes. With meticulous detail, she laid out the documented pattern of discrimination at Aerosphere, the financial fraud Bradley had overseen, and the coordinated campaign to destroy Marcus when he threatened to expose it all. Bradley attempted to dismiss the article as desperate fabrications from a disgraced executive, but his credibility was rapidly crumbling. 3 more major news outlets picked up the story, each adding new details from sources within Aerosphere and TechVision, who had been silently collecting evidence of Bradley's corruption for years. By that afternoon, TechVision's stock had begun to recover as investors reassessed the situation. The same social media platforms that had amplified Bradley's smear campaign now buzzed with support for Marcus and calls for investigations into Bradley's activities. "He's panicking," Zara reported after monitoring Bradley's communications through channels Elijah had established. "He's called emergency meetings with his entire network. He's trying to contain this, but too many people are distancing themselves now that his methods are being exposed." Marcus received a secure call from Helena Foster, the TechVision board chairwoman who had reluctantly supported his temporary removal. "The independent investigation has been compromised from the start," she admitted. "Bradley had connections to the firm we hired. We're terminating that relationship and requesting an SEC investigation instead." "It's too late for half measures," Marcus replied firmly. "The entire board needs to acknowledge their failure of oversight and take definitive action against Bradley and his allies." As pressure mounted, Marcus received intelligence that Bradley was making arrangements to leave the country. "Private jet filed for St. Kitts and Nevis," Elijah reported. "Departure scheduled for midnight from a private airfield." "A non-extradition country," Thomas noted. "He's planning to flee with whatever assets he can salvage." Marcus immediately contacted the FBI agents who had taken interest in the financial crimes evidence. "We need all airports and private airfields under surveillance. He's trying to escape jurisdiction." That evening, as Bradley arrived at the private airfield with luggage containing cash and bearer bonds, federal agents were waiting. The expression on his face as he was taken into custody, captured by a photojournalist who had been tipped off, became the defining image of his downfall. With Bradley in custody and his network unraveling, Marcus finally accessed the encrypted files that proved the entire conspiracy. Communications between Bradley and his allies detailed not just the plot against Marcus, but years of manipulating corporate systems for personal gain at the expense of employees and customers alike. As dawn broke over the mountain cabin, Marcus looked at his assembled team with profound gratitude. "We did it," he said simply. "Now, we rebuild." The days following Bradley's arrest saw an unprecedented media firestorm. Marcus coordinated with Dana Rivera to release a comprehensive series of articles detailing every aspect of Bradley's corruption and the systematic discrimination he had enabled and encouraged throughout Aerosphere's operations. Black CEO vindicated how Marcus Reynolds exposed corruption and discrimination at major airline, read the headline of Dana's most widely shared piece. It included the complete, unedited footage from the first-class incident that had started it all, allowing the public to witness the discriminatory treatment Marcus had experienced and his measured, professional response. Major news networks that had initially amplified Bradley's narrative now scrambled to correct their reporting. Morning shows that had questioned Marcus's stability a few weeks earlier now requested exclusive interviews with the CEO who fought back against corporate corruption. Social media trends shifted dramatically. Or Justice for Marcus replaced Walk or Boycott TechVision as former Aerosphere employees came forward with their own stories of discrimination under Bradley's leadership. The testimonies created a damning picture of an airline culture built on prejudice and preferential treatment. It wasn't just about race, explained a former flight attendant in a viral video. Bradley's entire system categorized passengers as priority or standard based on appearance, perceived wealth, and yes, often race. We were trained to provide different levels of service accordingly, all while using coded language to hide what we were really doing. TechVision's board of directors called an emergency meeting to formally reinstate Marcus as CEO. The vote was unanimous, with several board members who had sided with Bradley offering public resignations to allow for renewed leadership aligned with the company's true values. Helena Foster personally apologized during a press conference. "We failed in our oversight responsibilities by allowing Mr. Walsh's influence to cloud our judgment. Mr. Reynolds has demonstrated extraordinary resilience and integrity throughout this ordeal. TechVision is fortunate to have him return as CEO." The company's stock rebounded dramatically as investor confidence returned. Market analysts praised Marcus's handling of the crisis as a masterclass in corporate crisis management against overwhelming odds. While public opinion had shifted firmly in Marcus's favor, he remained focused on implementing meaningful change rather than simply enjoying vindication. His first official act upon returning to his office was to announce a comprehensive anti-discrimination initiative across both TechVision and Aerosphere Airlines. "This isn't about punishment or retribution," he explained in a company-wide address. "It's about building systems that make discrimination impossible to implement and easy to identify when it occurs. What happened to me was not unique, it just happened to someone with the resources to fight back." Aisha Johnson, whose courage had been instrumental in building their case, was appointed as Chief Customer Experience Officer for the airline with a mandate to completely restructure training and service protocols. Her first action was to eliminate the coded priority passenger designations that had enabled discrimination. Thomas Harrington returned from retirement to serve as Special Advisor on airline safety, leading the effort to address the maintenance issues that had been neglected during Bradley's embezzlement scheme. A comprehensive review of all aircraft and systems was implemented immediately, regardless of cost. Elijah Washington was named Chief Information Security Officer for both companies, tasked with building transparent systems that would prevent future abuses of power. His team developed protocols to ensure no single executive could override safety or ethical guidelines without multiple approvals. As these reforms took shape, the legal consequences for Bradley and his network continued to unfold. Federal prosecutors announced charges ranging from wire fraud and embezzlement to conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Several of Bradley's closest allies struck plea deals, providing further evidence of his central role in the corruption. Media coverage reached its peak when Marcus gave his first televised interview, calmly recounting the ordeal from the initial flight incident through the character assassination campaign to the final vindication. Viewership broke records across platforms, with social media analysis showing overwhelming public support. "This was never just about me," Marcus emphasized repeatedly. "This was about exposing a system that allowed discrimination and corruption to flourish unchecked for decades. My hope is that this serves as a wake-up call for corporate America." As public interest in the story began to plateau, Marcus received A disturbing message from one of Bradley's former security team members who had accepted a plea deal. Bradley had apparently established a scorched earth contingency plan in case of his arrest, designed to inflict maximum damage on those who brought him down. He called it Protocol Omega, the message explained. If he couldn't win, he wanted to ensure no one else could either. The instruction was simple: execute scorched earth. Before Marcus could investigate further, alerts began flooding in from TechVision and Aerosphere systems. Something catastrophic was unfolding across their integrated networks, something that had been planted months ago and was now activated remotely, despite Bradley being in custody. This isn't over, Marcus realized as emergency notifications multiplied. On his screen, Bradley's final revenge was just beginning. Chaos erupted across multiple systems simultaneously. TechVision's cloud infrastructure, which supported critical services for thousands of business clients, began failing in cascading patterns. More alarmingly, Aerosphere's flight communication systems started experiencing unexplained dropouts, temporarily cutting contact with aircraft in flight. "What are we looking at?" Marcus demanded as he gathered his emergency response team in the company's crisis management center. Elijah's fingers flew across multiple keyboards as he analyzed the incoming data. "It's a sophisticated dormant malware package, likely planted months ago with high-level access credentials. It's targeting our most critical systems first. Then, working down the priority chain." The implications were immediately clear to Marcus. Bradley knew he might lose eventually, so he created a doomsday switch. If he went down, he'd take everything with him, regardless of the human cost. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Reports came in of hospitals experiencing failures in TechVision medical monitoring systems, putting patient lives at risk. Airs Traffic Control reported 20 Aerosphere flights showing intermittent communication failures, creating dangerous uncertainty in crowded airspace. "We need to isolate and contain," Marcus instructed. "Priority 1 is life-critical systems hospitals, aircraft emergency services. Everything else is secondary." As technicians worked frantically to erect firewalls and establish backup communication channels, Elijah made a critical discovery. The malware has a central control module. It's receiving periodic authentication from somewhere external to our systems. If we can locate and neutralize that command node, we can stop the cascade. "Where is it?" Marcus asked, already dreading the answer. Initial trace suggests the master server farm in the Sierra Nevada facility. It's the most secure and isolated facility in our network. Elijah looked up grimly. It was designed to operate with minimal human intervention. Physical access is severely restricted. Marcus understood immediately. That's why Bradley chose it. He knew we'd have difficulty getting personnel there quickly enough to stop his program. The remote server farm, built into a former military bunker in the mountains, housed TechVision's most secure and critical data infrastructure. Designed to withstand natural disasters and continue operating independently if necessary, it was physically isolated from other facilities, with strict access protocols and limited entry points. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. "Based on the progression patterns, the malware will reach irreversible critical mass in approximately 3 hours, Elijah estimated. After that, even if we shut down the command node, the damage to key systems will be catastrophic. We're talking potential loss of life in medical facilities, possible aircraft incidents, and billions in economic damage." Marcus made an immediate decision. "I'm going to the Sierra facility. I need full emergency access protocols and the fastest transport available." "Marcus, I should go," Elijah protested. "I know the systems better." "You're needed here to coordinate the containment efforts. Besides, Bradley might have human assets at the facility. This isn't just a technical problem. It's his final move against me personally. I need to be there." Within 20 minutes, Marcus was aboard a high-speed helicopter racing toward the mountain facility. Throughout the flight, he remained in constant communication with the crisis team, receiving updates on the spreading system failures and providing direction for containment efforts. "We've managed to establish backup communication with all aircraft," Zara reported. "But the hospital systems are increasingly compromised. We've alerted all affected medical facilities to switch to manual monitoring, but it's creating dangerous gaps in patient care." The helicopter set down on the facility's landing pad, just as the sky darkened with approaching storm clouds. Marcus rushed to the entrance, using his emergency override codes to access the security door. The facility should have had a minimal staff of 4 technicians, but as he entered the main corridor, he found it eerily quiet. "Security breach in main server chamber," announced an automated voice over the intercom. "Unauthorized personnel detected." Marcus moved cautiously toward the central server room, keenly aware that Bradley's plan might include more than just malware. His suspicion proved correct when he rounded a corner and found himself facing 2 armed men in private security uniforms, the remnants of Bradley's personal force. "That's far enough, Reynolds," the larger man stated, weapon raised. "We have orders to ensure the protocol completes." "Bradley's in federal custody," Marcus responded evenly. "Whatever he's paying you, it's not worth adding federal charges to your problems." "This isn't about money anymore," the second man replied. "Walsh made arrangements that extend beyond his personal situation. Some people still benefit from seeing you and your companies destroyed." Marcus assessed his options. He couldn't overpower 2 armed men, but he also couldn't afford to waste precious time. The clock was ticking toward catastrophic system failure. "Look at what's happening," he said, gesturing to a status monitor on the wall showing cascading alerts across the network. "This isn't just about me or Tech Vision anymore. Hospital systems are failing. Aircraft communications are compromised. People could die. Is that what you signed up for?" Uncertainty flickered across the first guard's face. "We were told this was just about taking down your company's infrastructure, not endangering lives." "Bradley lied to you, just like he lies to everyone. Check the alerts yourselves. See what systems are being targeted." While the guards hesitated, a security camera in the ceiling subtly pivoted. Back at Tech Vision headquarters, Elijah had managed to access the facility's surveillance system and was watching the confrontation. Understanding Marcus's predicament, he remotely triggered the fire suppression system in an adjacent corridor, creating a sudden distraction. The momentary diversion was all Marcus needed. As the guards turned toward the sound of alarms, he ducked into a maintenance passage that provided alternate access to the main server room. By the time they realized what had happened, he had sealed the server room door behind him. Inside, Marcus found exactly what Elijah had predicted: the master control node for Bradley's malware, connected directly to the facility's most secure server cluster. A countdown timer displayed on the monitoring station showed less than 40 minutes remaining before critical systems reached the point of no return. "I'm in the server room," Marcus communicated through his secure link. "Guards outside, but I'm temporarily safe. What am I looking for?" Elijah guided him through the complex process of identifying and isolating the malicious code. The system requires physical authentication to initiate the shutdown sequence. You'll need to access the prime node directly and enter the override command, then physically disconnect the compromised servers from the network backbone. As Marcus worked, the guards began attempting to breach the sealed door. Metal groaned as they applied increasing force to the security locks. "Whatever you're going to do, do it fast," Zara urged through the communication link. "Hospital backup systems are reaching capacity. We have 6 aircraft in critical situations with degrading navigation." Marcus located the prime server node, but as he prepared to enter the override command, he discovered an additional security feature Bradley had implemented. "There's a biometric lock requiring Bradley's authentication," he reported, "and a warning that incorrect attempts will accelerate the countdown." "Stand by," Elijah responded. After a tense minute, he continued. "We have a partial workaround. The FBI has Bradley in custody. They can get his biometric data, but the transmission to your location would take too long. You'll need to manually bypass the authentication system." Following Elijah's instructions, Marcus carefully removed the server housing to access its underlying circuitry. The process required precise timing and steady hands, 2 challenges made significantly harder by the increasingly violent attempts to breach the door. "Hurry, Marcus!" Zara's voice carried barely controlled panic. "We just lost another hospital system. They're switching to emergency protocols, but patient monitoring is compromised." With sweat beading on his forehead, Marcus completed the delicate bypass connection. The server's security protocols momentarily flickered, creating a 3-second window to input the override command. His fingers flew across the keyboard, entering the complex sequence Elijah had provided. The main screen flashed red with a warning. Protocol Omega override attempted. Accelerating final sequence. No, Marcus muttered, watching in horror as the countdown timer began accelerating. It's a trap, Elijah realized. Bradley anticipated an override attempt. The system is designed to accelerate if tampered with. In that moment of crisis, Marcus drew on everything he had learned about Bradley's psychology throughout their conflict. He always needs to watch his enemies fail, Marcus thought aloud. There has to be a backdoor for him to retain control. Scanning the server array, Marcus noticed a non-standard connection leading to a discrete black box mounted separately from the main systems. Elijah, I've found something. It doesn't match your system schematics, a separate controller hardwired into the main array. That's it. Bradley wouldn't trust anyone else with the ultimate kill switch. Accessing it directly might bypass the acceleration trigger. As the door behind him began to give way, Marcus carefully opened the unmarked black box. Inside was a simple interface with a thumbprint scanner and keypad. Understanding Bradley's ego, Marcus entered what he guessed would be the override code, Bradley's birth date, followed by the stock symbol of his first company acquisition. The screen flashed green. Master override accepted, awaiting confirmation. Marcus pressed his thumb to the scanner, knowing it would reject his print but hoping it would reveal the final step. As expected, the system flashed biometric mismatch, but then displayed emergency verbal override option, speak authorization phrase. What would Bradley choose as his verbal confirmation? It had to be something meaningful to him personally, something that reflected his worldview. Recalling their final conversation in the boardroom, Marcus remembered Bradley's dismissive words, "Know your place." "Know your place," Marcus spoke clearly into the system's microphone. After a tense second, the display changed. Override accepted, protocol terminated. Throughout the TechVision and Aerosphere networks, the cascading failures suddenly halted. Systems began recovery sequences, prioritizing the most critical life support and navigation functions first. "You did it!" Zara's voice came through the communication link. "Systems are stabilizing. The hospitals are regaining control. Aircraft communications fully restored." The moment of triumph was short-lived. The server room door finally gave way, and the armed guards burst in, weapons raised. In the struggle that followed, Marcus managed to fully disconnect the malicious command node from the network backbone, ensuring the protocol could not be restarted. As he completed this crucial task, a deafening bang filled the room, and Marcus felt a searing pain in his side. He collapsed against the server rack, hand pressed to the spreading bloodstain on his shirt. Through fading consciousness, he heard sirens approaching the facility. The FBI team he had alerted before departure had finally arrived. As federal agents secured the room and called for medical evacuation, Marcus's last thought before losing consciousness was not of his own fate, but relief that Bradley's final attack had been thwarted. Marcus awoke to the steady beeping of hospital monitors and the soft rustle of flower arrangements being adjusted. Sunlight streamed through partially drawn blinds, casting warm patterns across a room filled with bouquets, cards, and balloons. As his vision cleared, he recognized Zara organizing a stack of correspondence at a small table nearby. "How long?" he asked, his voice raspy from disuse. Zara turned, relief washing over her face. 4 days. The doctor said you were lucky. The bullet passed through without hitting any major organs, but you lost a lot of blood before the medevac arrived." Marcus attempted to sit up, wincing at the sharp pain in his side. "The systems?" "Fully recovered. Elijah implemented security protocols to prevent any similar attacks in the future." She handed him a tablet. "You might want to see this." The screen displayed a news website with the headline, "Tech CEO Marcus Reynolds hailed as hero after thwarting catastrophic cyber attack. Tech pioneer personally intercepts attack that threatened hospital systems and aircraft safety." Below, it was another headline, "Bradley Walsh and associates face federal charges in landmark corporate corruption case." Prosecutors cite unprecedented scale of fraud and abuse of power as investigation expands to industry-wide practices. Over the following weeks, as Marcus recovered his strength, the full impact of what had occurred unfolded across multiple fronts. Federal prosecutors had expanded their investigation beyond Bradley to include his entire network, revealing corruption that extended into regulatory agencies, media organizations, and competing companies. Bradley himself faced a staggering array of charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, attempted murder, and terrorism-related charges for the systems attack that had endangered lives. His defense strategy of claiming ignorance collapsed when multiple associates accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony against him. The court proceedings attracted international attention, with legal experts calling it the most significant corporate corruption case of the decade. When the verdicts were finally announced, Bradley received multiple consecutive sentences totaling 87 years of virtual life sentence for the 59-year-old former executive. TechVision and Aerosphere both emerged from the crisis stronger than before. Marcus implemented sweeping reforms across both companies, creating new transparency and accountability standards that were soon adopted industry-wide. The stock price not only recovered, but reached new heights as investors recognized the improved governance structure. Aisha Johnson's appointment as Chief Customer Experience Officer proved transformative for Aerosphere. Under her leadership, the airline developed new service standards explicitly designed to eliminate discriminatory practices and ensure consistent, respectful treatment for all passengers regardless of appearance or background. "Our priority is creating an experience where every passenger feels valued," she explained in industry publications. "We've eliminated the tiered service approach that created opportunities for bias and replaced it with clear, equitable standards." The team that had supported Marcus through his darkest days found permanent roles within the expanded corporate structure. Thomas Harrington led a comprehensive safety review that identified and corrected numerous maintenance issues left unaddressed. During Bradley's tenure, Elijah Washington revolutionized the company's cybersecurity framework, developing systems that became industry benchmarks. 6 months after the hospital room awakening, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at TechVision's annual leadership conference. His physical recovery was complete, though he occasionally touched his side where a scar reminded him of how close he had come to losing everything. "What we experienced was not simply one man's corruption, but the failure of systems designed to prevent such abuses of power," he told the attentive audience. "The lesson isn't that Bradley Walsh was uniquely evil, but that our corporate structures and culture enabled his behavior for decades." The conference marked the official launch of the Reynolds Foundation for Corporate Ethics, a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting discrimination and corruption in the business world. Funded with $50 million of Marcus's personal fortune, the foundation would provide legal support for whistleblowers, conduct research on ethical business practices, and develop training programs for identifying and addressing systemic discrimination. Among the foundation's first initiatives was a technology platform that companies could implement to anonymously track and identify patterns of discriminatory treatment before they became entrenched. The system, developed by Elijah's team, used artificial intelligence to detect subtle behavioral patterns that might indicate bias without requiring individuals to risk their careers by reporting incidents. "Technology alone can't solve human problems," Marcus acknowledged, "but it can help us see patterns we might otherwise miss and provide data that makes denial more difficult." 3 weeks after the conference, Marcus received special permission to visit the Federal Correctional Facility, where Bradley Walsh was serving his sentence. In a sterile meeting room under the watchful eyes of guards, the two men faced each other for the first time since Bradley's arrest. Bradley had aged dramatically in the intervening months. His previously immaculate appearance had given way to institutional plainness, his confident posture replaced by a defensive hunch. Yet his eyes still burned with the same resentment and superiority that had driven his actions against Marcus. "Come to gloat?" Bradley asked bitterly. "No," Marcus replied calmly. "I came to understand." "Understand what? How I almost destroyed you? How close I came to winning? Why discrimination was so important to your business model? Why maintaining those hierarchies meant more to you than the company's actual success?" Bradley's laugh was hollow, You still don't get it. It was never about money, I had plenty. It was about maintaining the natural order. People like you threatening people like me is the disorder. There is no natural order, Bradley. Just systems we create and maintain, for better or worse. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Your systems failed. Mine are building something better. As Marcus stood to leave, Bradley called after him. Don't think this is over, Reynolds. I still have people loyal to me, people who believe in the same things I do. Marcus turned at the door. I'm counting on it. They'll be the control group that proves how outdated and ineffective your approaches really are. With that, he left Bradley to contemplate the decades of confinement ahead. Back at TechVision headquarters, Marcus convened his leadership team to announce his most ambitious initiative yet. Today, we're launching Project Equality, an artificial intelligence system trained to detect and prevent discrimination in real time across all our services and products. The AI system, built on the experiences and data gathered throughout the conflict with Bradley, would continuously monitor for patterns of differential treatment based on race, gender, appearance, or other factors. More importantly, it would be open-sourced, allowing companies worldwide to implement similar protections. What began with a denied meal in first class has led to a complete reimagining of how technology can promote fairness, Marcus told the assembled executives. Bradley Walsh thought he could destroy us. Instead, he inadvertently helped create the most powerful tool against discrimination the corporate world has ever seen. In the final analysis, Marcus reflected, his personal vindication was far less significant than the systemic changes the ordeal had inspired. The true victory wasn't defeating Bradley Walsh, but transforming the experience into protection for countless others who might otherwise face discrimination without the resources to fight back. As he looked out the window of his office at the city below, Marcus thought about the journey from that first-class cabin to this moment. The path had been unimaginably difficult, testing every aspect of his character and resolve. Yet he wouldn't change it, for the Crucible had forged something valuable not just for him, but for everyone the corporations he led would ever serve. On his desk sat a framed note from a young passenger on a recent Aerosphere flight. Thank you for making a world where everyone gets treated the same, no matter what they look like. In the end, that simple sentiment made everything worthwhile. Marcus Reynolds' journey teaches us that discrimination still exists in even the most prestigious settings, and fighting it requires courage, strategy, and allies. The story demonstrates how systems of discrimination are often protected by powerful networks that will go to extraordinary lengths to maintain their privilege and prevent exposure. First, we learn that documentation is crucial. Marcus's ability to record and preserve evidence of discrimination was fundamental to his eventual vindication. Without concrete proof, allegations can be dismissed or twisted against the victim. Second, the importance of allies cannot be overstated. Marcus only succeeded because people like Aisha, Elijah, Thomas, and Zara risked their careers to stand with him. Facing systemic discrimination requires collective action, not isolated heroism. Third, we see how accountability must be structural, not just individual. While Bradley was punished, Marcus's true victory came through creating systems that prevent discrimination, rather than simply reacting to it after damage is done. Fourth, the story reveals how technology can be weaponized against those challenging the status quo, but also harnessed as a powerful tool for equality when designed with justice in mind. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, Marcus teaches us that the measure of success isn't personal vindication, but creating lasting change. His transformation of a personal injustice into a force for systemic reform represents the highest form of leadership. Discrimination thrives in darkness and silence. By shining light on these practices and refusing to be silenced, we create the possibility of a world where everyone receives equal treatment regardless of appearance, background, or circumstance. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have fought back against the discrimination or let it slide to avoid conflict? Comment below with your thoughts on how you would handle being discriminated against in a public setting. If this story resonated with you and you believe in standing up against injustice, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories, that illuminate the ongoing struggle for equality in our society. Share this video with someone who needs to understand how discrimination still operates in seemingly civilized spaces. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Marcus's experience. Remember, your voice matters. Sometimes speaking up not only changes your situation, but transforms entire systems for the better.